History remembers the emperors, the conquerors, the kings, whose names echo through time. But what if everything you learned about history's greatest empires was incomplete? Behind every throne, there were whispers. Behind every conquest, there were invisible hands. Financiers who moved gold like chess pieces. Advisors who shaped destiny from the shadows. Merchant networks that decided which kingdoms would rise and which would fall. Tonight, we pull back the curtain on the secret architects of empire, the spy masters, the bankers, the power brokers who understood a truth that would terrify most rulers. Real power doesn't need a crown. Asterisk, asterisk, the year is 500 BCE. While armies clash on battlefields, a different kind of empire is being built. The Phoenicians, maritime merchants who controlled the Mediterranean not with swords, but with something far more powerful: information. These weren't just traders, they were the world's first intelligence network. Every port they touched became a node in a vast communication system. They knew which kingdoms were starving before the kings did. They knew where rebellions would spark before the first torch was lit. And they used this knowledge ruthlessly. When the Persian Empire needed to expand, Phoenician advisors whispered the roots. When Greek city-states feuded, Phoenician gold funded both sides. The genius, no matter who won the war, the merchants won the peace. This template controlled the flow of resources, monopolized information, remained invisible, would echo through every empire that followed. Asterisk, asterisk, Rome, the eternal city. An empire so vast it seemed unstoppable. But Julius Caesar knew a secret that kept him awake at night. He who controls the grain, controls Rome. This wasn't Caesar's wisdom, it was a warning passed down from the equestrian class. Rome's merchant elite, while senators debated in marble halls, these businessmen controlled something more vital: Egypt's grain supply. When Rome annexed Egypt in 30 BCE, it wasn't just military conquest. It was the culmination of decades of financial maneuvering by grain merchants, who had systematically bought influence in both empires. The war was their endgame. The prize, monopoly over the Mediterranean's food supply. But here's what history books rarely mention: Marcus Licinius Crassus, one of Rome's richest men and member of the first triumvirate, didn't just lend money. He created Rome's first private fire brigade. When buildings burned, he'd negotiate the purchase price while the flames rose. Refuse his offer, he'd watch it burn. This was Rome's true power structure. Public office was theater. Real decisions happened in private villas, where creditors met debtors, where fortunes were built on disaster, where entire provinces were bought and sold before the Senate ever voted. When Rome fell, it wasn't barbarians who delivered the killing blow. The empire had been hollowed out from within, decades of wealth extraction by an invisible elite, who realized they didn't need the empire anymore. They just needed its trade routes. Asterisk, asterisk, 1206 AD, a warlord named Temujin becomes Genghis Khan and launches the largest contiguous empire in human history. Military genius. Yes, but the Mongol secret weapon wasn't the composite bow. It was the YAM, the most sophisticated intelligence network the medieval world had ever seen. Every 25 miles across Mongol territory, there was a station. Fresh horses, fresh riders. Messages could travel 200 miles. In a single day, a speed unmatched, until the telegraph. But these weren't just messages. They were intelligence reports. Weather patterns, troop movements, political gossip, economic data. Genghis Khan knew what European kings would take weeks to discover. When he invaded Khwarezm, he'd already mapped every fortress, identified every corrupt official, knew which merchants held grudges against the Shah. The invasion wasn't a surprise attack. It was a data-driven execution. But here's the shocking part. The YAM wasn't Mongol invention. They'd adopted it from the Chinese, who'd learned it from the Persians, who'd inherited it from those same Phoenician trade networks. For 2,000 years, the blueprint for empire hadn't changed. Whoever controlled information controlled the world, and the Mongols took it further. They created merchant passports, the first international documents allowing safe passage across territories. Why? Because loyal merchants were more valuable than conquered soldiers. They fed intelligence back to the Khan while generating the wealth that funded his armies. When Marco Polo traveled the Silk Road, he wasn't just an explorer. He was moving through a world where commerce and espionage were inseparable, where every merchant caravan was a potential intelligence asset. The Mongol Empire crumbled. A small city-state in a lagoon was perfecting the art of invisible power. Venice, not a vast territory, but something more dangerous. A node in every trade network that mattered. The Council of Ten, secret ruling body, operated with a simple principle: Information is currency, and monopoly is everything. They created the world's first organized intelligence service. Spies posed as merchants in every major port. Cryptographers developed unbreakable codes. Assassins eliminated threats with poison so subtle it seemed like natural death. But Venice's real genius was financial. In 1171, they invented something that would change civilization: the government bond. By allowing citizens to buy debt, Venice created the first modern state financing system. Wars were no longer limited by gold reserves. They could be funded by promises, by future wealth that didn't exist yet. This innovation spread like fire. The Dutch perfected it. The British built an empire on it. The system we live under today, governments funding wars through debt. Central banks controlling money supply was invented in Venetian counting houses 850 years ago. And here's what should terrify you. The families that controlled Venice's finances didn't disappear. They evolved. Their names changed. Their methods modernized. But the principle remained. Real power isn't holding territory. It's holding debt. When Napoleon finally conquered Venice in 1797, the Council of Ten had already moved their wealth. The city fell, but the network survived, embedding itself in every financial capital that rose afterward. Asterisk, asterisk, do you see it now? The pattern hiding in plain sight. Every great empire had a shadow empire. Phoenician merchants behind Persian conquests. Roman financiers behind senatorial power. Merchant networks steering Mongol expansion. Venetian bankers funding European wars. These weren't separate groups. They were the same system, evolving. When one empire collapsed, the network migrated to the next rising power. They didn't bet on winners. They created them by controlling what every empire needs: money, information, and resources. The British East India Company, Standard Oil, the Federal Reserve, the World Bank. Different names, same blueprint. Private entities wielding public power, controlling the flow of resources, operating beyond democratic oversight. And here's the most chilling revelation. These networks are invisible because we're trained to look at the wrong things. We study presidents and generals, while the real power sits in boardrooms and trading floors, making decisions that will reshape the world before any politician even knows there's a crisis. Asterisk, you might ask, why does this matter? These empires are dust. These networks, if they exist, seem untouchable. It matters because the game never ended. It evolved. Those grain merchants who controlled Rome, today they're agricultural commodity traders. Those Venetian bond traders, they're sovereign debt speculators. The Mongol yam, it's high-frequency trading and algorithmic information warfare. But here's what should give you hope. Every empire, no matter how powerful, no matter how invisible its puppet masters, eventually falls. Not because of armies, not because of revolutions, but because the networks that sustain them become so complex, so interconnected, that one failure cascades into total collapse. Rome fell when its financial system became too corrupt to maintain roads. The Mongol Empire fractured when regional administrators realized they didn't need the Khan. Venice declined when new trade routes made their monopoly obsolete. The question isn't whether today's invisible empires will fall. It's whether we'll build something better in their place, or whether we'll simply watch new shadow powers rise from the ashes, wearing different masks but playing the same ancient game. Asterisk, asterisk. History's greatest empires weren't built by the names in textbooks. They were built by the whispers between them. The merchants who knew which way the wind was blowing. The financiers who understood that debt is stronger than any chain. The spy masters who recognized that information is the only resource that multiplies when shared. These hidden powers didn't disappear when empires fell. They learned. They adapted. They're still here, operating in the spaces between the visible and invisible, the legal and the shadow. The question that should haunt us isn't who they are. It's this. In an age where information moves at the speed of light and money flows across borders in milliseconds, where power is more concentrated and more invisible than ever before, are we living in their greatest empire yet?